Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck tech idea. Today I'm featuring Winota, Joiner of Forces. She's a 4 mana 4/4 with a very long text, so whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn, and put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in random order. Winota is a great combination out of stacks pieces and very powerful combat turns, and so we are going to win the game. We want to cheat in cards like Combat Celebrant, a 3 mana 4/1. If Combat Celebrant hasn't been exerted this turn, you may exert it as it attacks. When you do, untap all other creatures you control, and after this phase there is an additional combat phase. Luckily, Combat Celebrant gets cheated in as an indestructible creature, so stat line of 4/1 isn't too bad. Rionya, Fire Dancer, a 5 mana 3/4, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, create X tokens that are copies of another target creature you control, where X is 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste and exile them at the beginning of the next end step. We are not playing that many instant or sorcery spells in this deck, but already one copy of another creature is very powerful in this deck. Loyal Apprentice, a 2 mana 2/1 with haste, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, create a 1/1 colorless swap the artifact creature token with flying. That token gains haste until end of turn. We don't necessarily have to cheat in Loyal Apprentice, as it is also a great drop while we are curving out, and with Winota on the field we already get a non-human creature which can attack to trigger Winota. Lena, Selfless Champion, a 6 mana 3/3, and when she enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token for each non-token creature we control. We can sacrifice her, so creatures we control with power less than Lena gain indestructible until end of turn. The great thing about Lena is that she creates soldier tokens, which are officially non-human creatures, so they will trigger Winota again. Angra's Marauders, a 7 mana 4/4, and if a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. Or also Boromir, Warden of the Tower, a 3 mana 3/3 with vigilance, and whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. We can also sacrifice him, so creatures we control gain indestructible until end of turn, and the ring tempts us. And now let's look at a few creature cards that will trigger Winota's ability. Goblin Rebel Master, a 3 mana 2/2. Other goblin creatures we control attack each turn if able. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token with haste. Whenever Goblin Rebel Master attacks, it gains +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking goblin. Doorkeeper Thrall, a 2 mana 1/2 with flash and flying, and artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. We personally don't care about ETBs, but our opponents do. And due to the fact that the Thrall has flash, we can use him in a very reactive way to cancel one of our opponent's ETBs. Aurelia, the Law Above, a 5 mana 4/4 with flying, vigilance and haste. Whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. And whenever a player attacks with 5 or more creatures, Aurelia, the Law Above, deals 3 damage to each of your opponents and you gain 3 life. Aurelia is a powerful card draw engine and only an angel as her creature types, which means that she also triggers Winota. Legion Warboss, a 3 mana 2/2 with Mentor, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. That token gains haste until end of turn and attacks this combat if able. Archon of Emeria, another great stacks piece, a 3 mana 2/3 with flying, and each player can't cast more than one spell each turn. Non-basic lands your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. And Vryn Wingmare, a 3 mana 2/1 with flying, and non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. As you'll create a very wide board really quickly, you definitely need to protect it, so we play Flawless Maneuver, a 3 mana instant. If you control a commander, you may cast the spell without paying its mana cost. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. Deflecting Sword, 3 mana instant. If you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost. You may choose new targets for target spell or ability. Make a Stand, 3 mana instant. Creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain indestructible until end of turn. Akroma's Will, a 4 mana instant. Choose one. If you control a commander as you cast a spell, you may choose both. Creatures you control gain flying, vigilance and double strike until end of turn. Or creatures you control gain lifelink, indestructible and protection from all colors until end of turn. This one can also be used as a great finisher in this deck. Boros Charm, a 2 mana instant with choose one. Boros Charm deals 4 damage to target player or planeswalker. Permanents you control gain indestructible until end of turn, or target creature gains double strike until end of turn. Unbreakable Formation, a 3 mana instant. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. It also has Addendum, so if you cast a spell during your main phase, put a 1/1 counter on each of those creatures and they gain Vigilance until end of turn. We don't only want to rely on our creatures on the board, so we also play a few token generators. Goblin Assault, a 3-mana enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token with haste, and goblin creatures attack each turn if able. Skrell's Hive, a 2-mana enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature token with Toxic 1 and this creature can't block. Legion's Landing, a 1-mana legendary enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. When you attack with 3 or more creatures, transform Legion's Landing into Adanto, the First Fort. It's a legendary land which you can tap for white mana, or you can also pay 3 mana and tap it to create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. Due to a lot of creatures entering our battlefield, we also play Impact Tremors, a 2-mana enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent. We also play War Leader's Call, a 3-mana enchantment, and creatures you control get +1/+1. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, War Leader's Call deals 1 damage to each opponent. You want to win more? You get it. Blade Historian, a 4-mana human cleric, and attacking creatures you control have double strike. Itself is a 2/3, but we care about its static text line, as it doesn't require our creatures to be declared as an attacker. So as soon as we hit this one with Winota and it enters the battlefield, all of our creatures have double strike. Myrel, Shadow of Argive, a 4-mana 3/4, and during your turn your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures or enchantments. Whenever Myrel, Shield of Argive attacks, create X 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature tokens, where X is the number of soldiers you control. Not only does Myrel protect our turn, she also creates more tokens which will trigger Winota. Charismatic Conqueror, a 2-mana 2/2 with Vigilance, and whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. If you can bring this one out early and your opponents don't make their artifacts or creatures enter tapped, you will have a nice board of vampires when you bring out Winota. Magus of the Moon, a 3-mana 2/2, and non-basic lands are mountains. I don't really have to explain this card, your opponents are gonna hate it. Chance for Glory, a 3-mana instant, and creatures you control gain indestructible, so it can already be used as a very powerful protection spell. But you also take an extra turn after this one. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. Of course it might be a little bit risky to play this card, but depending on your board state it might be enough to win the game. Just as last chance, a 2-mana sorcery, take an extra turn after this one. At the beginning of that turn's end step, you lose the game. Definitely make sure to have a powerful board before you cast these 2 spells to make sure that you are going to win the game with your extra turn. Alright guys, these were a few cards that I will play in Winota Join Our Forces. Let me know down in the comments below which cards you would add to the deck, which legendary creature I shall feature next, and then I would say, see you in the next one. Goodbye guys.